If you are new in your Tai Chi journey, especially if you're taking up Tai Chi for its health benefits, I believe the single most important Tai Chi energy for you to master is the energy of split. Now, I think most people are probably familiar by now with the fact that Tai Chi is a powerful exercise to improve balance, reduce fall risk, and improve mobility, especially as people get older. But it can be difficult to translate Tai Chi movement to our daily activities like walking if we don't understand it at a fundamental level of movement. And that's why I want to explore the technique of split, but not just the visible splitting of the arms that people in Tai Chi are familiar with. I want to explore it at the level of its energetic nature, which comes from our core. If we want to understand split and apply it everywhere in our lives, we have to understand it as a specific combination of waist rotations and hip power, not merely the movement of the arms. Once you see and understand the nature of the core movement in split, you will then be able to find it all throughout the Tai Chi forms, even where it's not recognized, and you will find that it is present all throughout your daily life when you are walking. When you make that connection, you're going to be able to apply your Tai Chi activity to your daily life, improve your balance, improve your mobility, and you're going to be able to walk with much more confidence and fluidity. If you're new to the channel, I'm Dr. Todd Martin, creator of the Tai Chi Code. I'm also the creator of the Walking Code, which is why in this lesson, I want to tie the Tai Chi energy of split to the same movements that we're going to be doing when we are walking. If you find this video helpful, make sure to click the like button and subscribe to the channel, and let's go ahead and jump right into it. We see the technique of split prominently featured in one of the first movements people do in Tai Chi, parting the wild horse's mane. You'll notice the splitting action of the arms when I do the movement. And then we see it followed up again in the very next movement of crane cools its wings, and you can see the splitting movement of the arms. But we need to look past the movement of the arms if we want to understand what split really means. And this is why I developed the Tai Chi Code. Going back to the fundamental roots of Tai Chi, looking at the Tai Chi trigram energies to see if we can create a rational link between the trigrams and the movements that we are doing, not merely in a metaphorical sense, but in an anatomic sense. And I believe I've come up with that. And people may or may not buy into my complete understanding and description, but I believe if you follow along in this video, it will make a lot of sense to you. So when we are moving, whether in Tai Chi or just walking around in our daily life, we are controlling our movements. We're guiding our movements with our waist rotation. Simply put, if you're wanting to go that way, you have to turn your waist that way as you go. It's not quite that simple, but that's the basic idea. You can't just use your legs to turn your body. You have to use your torso to turn your body in the direction that you want to go. So we have to guide with our waist muscles that control the rotation. And there's another principle that we need to understand, and that is rooting. We need to be able to ground one leg, connecting our spine to the ground we're walking on to create balance and flow. I switch my root from my right leg, then to my left leg, and then back to my right leg as I walk. And this is also a movement controlled by your core, specifically your lower waist muscles. And then finally, we have to power everything we do when we're standing up using our hip actions. We can power a movement by extending from our glutes to push the body forward, or we can power a movement by using the core hip flexors pulling up as we shift our weight. And so I'm powering by lifting the hip, not pushing the hip back, as in this motion. So we have either the hip flexors or the hip extensors controlling power. Now, how can we apply this to split and understand it in Tai Chi and in our daily lives? What we'll see in split is that the direction of our waist rotation, and I'm talking about the upper waist here, is going to turn toward the hip that is flexing. One rule of thumb in Tai Chi is that we are using one side of the core or the other with each movement at the same time. We're not using both sides. So when I do split, I'm going to be powering by flexing one of the hips, in this case, my right hip. And I'm going to have my direction turning toward that right hip. So if you can think of the upper waist turning as you're trying to lift the right hip up, the body turns into the right hip. It's a receiving sort of action, which you could call yin, as opposed to projecting my arm outward, which would be yang. So the fact that I'm turning the upper waist towards my right hip as it lifts or flexes is a yin action. And at the same time, I'm going to be using my lower abs to root the left leg, turning the lower abs or belly button to the left. So the upper waist and the lower waist are turning in opposite directions. We can call this spiral energy of the spine, or torsional energy is what I like to call it. It's a motion generated by the waist abdominal muscles, but it affects our spinal movement, creating that healthy twisting action in the spine. And those are the three fundamental elements of the split motion. I'll go back to the movement right before we finish parting the wild horse's mane so you can see it in action. What we're going to be doing is turning the upper waist, as I said, towards the right. And the entire time I'm doing the motion, I am turning my upper waist to the right. But at the same time, I'm turning the belly button or the lower abs to the left. And that is what is pulling the arm around to face in this forward position. So we have a torsional movement of the waist here, creating a directly forward position because the rotations cancel themselves out. So those are the upper waist and lower waist actions. And at the same time, we're powering by flexing the hip. So I'm essentially lifting the right leg up and forward using my core hip flexors. But we don't actually lift the leg off the ground because this energy that's going backward from the upper waist rotation is projecting some backward energy into that leg, keeping it fixed on the ground. And when we do all of that at the same time, the hip energy, the upper waist energy, and the lower ab energy, we end up with the movement of split. And we end up creating the splitting of the arms. When I was first learning Tai Chi, I would ask my instructor if they could clarify, because we talked about the rotation of the waist creating the movements, but I was like, well, why, when I rotate in parting the wild horse's mane, does my left arm go up and forward and my right arm go back? But if I'm rotating in seemingly the same way in brush knee, my right arm goes forward and my left palm goes across and down. Even though when a lot of people describe waist rotation, they just do that, one block rotation of the waist. So we're not differentiating between the two. What we have to do is separate out the upper waist and lower waist and realize that sometimes they move in the same direction and sometimes they move in opposite directions. When we do split, they're moving in opposite directions. Then after we do parting the wild horse's mane, we're going to do a half step up. And what we're going to see for this is all we have to do for the half step up is coordinate the upper waist now with the lower waist. So I'm going to turn the upper waist, which is currently turning to the right, I'm going to turn it to the left, and that is what brings me up into the half step. So we've created a different energy. We now have what I call concordant rotation of the waist, meaning the upper and lower waist are moving in the same direction. Going back to that preliminary position, if I had shifted forward, turning the upper waist and lower waist to the left as I flexed my right hip, I would have ended up in this position, not in the parting the wild horse's mane position. So I had to start off with that torsional rotation, and then I apply the concordant rotation for the half step up. And then we actually do split going backward, powering with flexion of the left hip, turning the upper waist to the left, which sinks into that, and then retreating the root back to the right, pulling me back to the right leg. Torsional rotation now on the right side of the waist. And then I go into empty stance by turning again into concordant rotation. So now both my upper and lower waist are turning to the right. And then I complete crane cools its wings by going back to split, by turning the upper waist to the left. And now I am bringing that torsional rotation back to the right side of the core while the left hip is flexing, and that creates the next split movement, which is crane cools its wings. So now we can see in Tai Chi where that split energy can be seen in the first couple of techniques that you'll generally learn. But now I want to apply that same core movement understanding to our walking. And I said that this is probably the most important energy for you to understand, because when we do it wrong when we're walking, it probably explains 90% of the walking technique errors that people make, whether they're leaning forward, or they're walking with duck feet, or they have an anterior pelvic tilt. All of these can be traced back to a failure to do that split motion correctly. And in the walking code, I call the energy of split set, because we're not generally feeling the splitting of the arms, but what we're doing is using it to settle the weight or set up our next movement. When we're walking, we are using the set motion after we place the heel and we are settling the weight onto our forward leg. I said that you won't see a splitting of the arms, but I'm not really right about that. When we walk, we do see the splitting of the arms in that way. So it's just a more vertical motion rather than a horizontal splitting action, but the arms are splitting as we are walking. So after we have placed the foot or the heel on the ground, this is the loading response phase, one of the most important phases for us to get right when we are walking. We have to bring the forefoot down in a controlled manner rather than falling onto it with the force of momentum. And that requires shifting our root to that forward leg by turning the belly button to the left as I turn the upper waist to the right. And just like in parting the wild horse's mane, that torsional movement of the waist keeps the body facing forward. And so we can practice that turning. Think about the motion of the upper waist as turning forward on the side of the heel that's placed, and think of the belly button as turning backward as we shift. And the speed with which we change the weight is going to be proportional to how fast we rotate. If I want to change slowly, I rotate slowly. If I want to change quickly, I rotate quickly. And when we combine that with our hip energy, we have complete control of our gait. As I said in split or set. We have the waist rotation I just reviewed, and we are using flexion of the rear leg hip. So I'm lifting that hip or leg forward as I shift the weight. And that brings me to this position where I have settled the weight. Then I have to switch the power from the hip from the right side to the left side to generate the swing through action. And that is, in Tai Chi, the energy of press. Then we place the heel, and then now we do split on the other side. And then press, and then we place the heel. That's actually a rollback action. Then we do split, press, roll back, split. And we're constantly doing that sequence of core movements. I call the core techniques in both the Tai Chi code and the walking code as we are walking. And if we can coordinate those three sequences of motion in the waist and the hips, we'll be able to walk with more fluidity, walk with more balance and confidence, and we're going to keep our spine properly aligned and our joints aligned, so we're reducing the stress and impact on them so we can age with healthy, pain-free joints. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll have a link to both of my channels, the Tai Chi code and Todd Martin MD, where I talk about the walking code, in the description section. And I'll also have a link to the walking code online course and the Tai Chi code online course. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one.